right, I have 9 o'clock by my official Apple time. So if you'll all rise and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance, we'll open this meeting. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I'll just keep on yours if I need to. Got too much stuff here. All right, welcome all to the April meeting of the Clinton County Council. Full agenda today. We'll jump right in. We have meeting minutes from our March meeting, March the 9th. To approve, Mr. Scribe and our.
Yeah, it's not here.
Oh, yeah.
I didn't see any corrections or anything that was glaring, so I would make a motion to approve the minutes.
Motion by Jeff and a second by Ron. All those in favor, raise your right hand. Motion carries 6-0 with Mr. Beard abstaining. Oh, you did too? I'm sorry. So 5-0. I thought your hand was up, Mike. Community corrections, Brett Barton, monthly update. Good morning.
This morning we have 8 individuals on our program. We have 11 juveniles, 5 on CTP and 1 on pretrial release. I want to bring to your attention, I don't know if you're familiar with House Enrollment Act 1068 was passed by the governor last week. But it calls for establishment of a Justice Reinvestment Council. We can do that locally or we can do that regionally. Most of the players that are mandated to be on that council are already on my advisory board. Spoke briefly to the judges about it. We don't know which way we want to go yet, but we have to have that established by July 1st.
And its purpose is what?
I can read the purpose. The purpose of Justice Reinvestment Advisory Council is to review policies, promote state and local collaboration, and provide assistance for evidence-based practices and best practices in community-based alternative and recidivism reduction programming, including probation services, problem-solving courts, mental health and addiction treatment and recovery services, programs providing for pretrial diversion, community corrections, evidence-based recidivism reduction programs for currently incarcerated persons, pretrial services, other rehabilitation alternatives, and incorporation of evidence-based decision-making into decisions concerning jail overcrowding. I sent this out to my board last week, and I let them know it's kind of redundant to what my advisory board already does. It's just another layer that the state wants. I can't imagine any more data or information that they're going to gather from this that we don't already give them, but it is what it is. So, Alan and Josh, you're both mandated to be on that, or whoever you want to designate. So, I don't know if Mike and Mark still want to do that in their place. So, it's something I'll bring up to my advisory board in May on how we're going to handle that.
Just having that kind of same function with a more official, statutorily designated title help in any way, and having the points or the review that you get from DMC?
That's a good question. I don't know. I'm actually meeting with 2 of my program managers on the 27th, and I've got a plan laid out to compare us to other counties that are much more funded than we are, and I want some answers from that. So
yeah.
I've been waiting for this day for quite a while to get some resolution. So.
Okay, keep us posted.
I'm very proud of what we do.
Let us know if we can help.
One other thing I wanted to bring up, are you guys familiar with the directory that hangs next to the elevator out there? It's last week I was waiting on the elevator. There was a couple with me. I don't know if they were local or out, but they just commented on how shoddy that looked. So take a peek at it, look at it. It's been that way for a decade. Yeah, he knows what I'm talking about. But let's replace that, and it's in the building. I think it reflects on our community and something that just needs to be updated. So take a peek at it.
All right, thanks for bringing that up. We have Nancy with us today. Nancy Ward on our probation report. I know she submitted her written report. We didn't have charges for the first time in a few months. I remember it's like $2,100, which if you look at the history, it seems like it's the coming of spring. Gets people fired up, and it seems like her charges typically go up in March and April. So we'll consider that report submitted. Moving on to new business, we have our annual review of the CF1 forms for tax abatements that the county has issued to various commercial entities, this is their annual reporting to show that they're still in substantial compliance with those tax abatement promises that they made at the time that the awards were given. So today we have Phil Triplett with us today to run through a few of those documents.
Yeah. Good morning, everyone. I'm Phil Triplett. I'm an attorney here in town. Normally you see Jay here. He's the one who handles most of these, but he couldn't be here this morning, so I'm going to cover them for him. I think he provided each of you a brief summary of each of the CF1s that you'll be considering today. I'll go through in the order that he's prepared that summary. First is Phillips Saw & Tool. Phillips Saw & Tool has invested in new equipment, almost $1,094,000. IT equipment, they've invested almost $9,500. They've invested $131,000 of new vehicles. They've added 2 full-time employees and 2 part-time employees. And the 2020 payroll was slightly down with fewer than projected employees due to COVID. COVID has forced the shutdown of many of Phillips Saw & Tool's suppliers and customers. Sales were down about 30% last year, and some of the equipment that they've paid for, at least paid in large part for, has not been provided because of a manufacturing slowdown from the supplier. Also, Chenoweth Real Estate is connected to Phillips Saw & Tool. They are the real estate company that where Phillips Saw & Tool is located. And they've constructed a new building and installed a sewer line. And the cost of the new building fell in the middle of the cost projection. The cost of the new building was $324,000, which is right in the middle of the estimated projection. And we have Jordan Chenoweth here from Phillips Saw & Tool to answer any questions or speak to it.
Yeah, thanks. Good morning.
Good morning.
Would you like to make my okay? Okay, perfect. Be official on the microphone. Well, I just wanted to say good morning. Thank you for having this meeting. While I think that we're looking to try to get an extension, I want to just approach this and be realistic and say we had competitors who lost their lives this year and who shut down their company. So while my sales were down 30%, and I'm anxious as my wife and I are getting ready to go into the 50% of ownership in the family, I step back and say my dad and my mother are still here, and so is my wife, and others couldn't say that. And so when COVID came, we still decided to be aggressive. We brought on the highest salaried, most tenured salesman in the 30 years that my father has owned the business. And we set out to give that 3 months, actually extended it 5, and it just did not work out. And we tried new partnerships, and as Phil said, we had equipment that was on order, and our equipment comes from Germany, and that's where most of Solvay manufacturing is. And so a lot of their factories were working 1 day a week on a skeleton crew, and if communication wasn't in on Thursday, you'd have to wait for an email to the next Thursday. So you can see how quickly how 4 to 9 months extend to 12 to 18. And so as a positive, people are still showing up to work. We still have, like everyone else, people that test positive and go in and out. That's clearly why I'm wearing my mask this morning, in respect to you and myself. But also just to say that I'm proud of what we did, but it was a really hard year. I'm thankful that we received certain assistance with the PPP, but it also meant that I qualified for it. So as much as it was helpful at times, it also meant that we were in need. And so not to be one that is as high pride, but I'm thankful for what we have, and I'm thankful for the effort that was there. But this last year was really hard, and it was hard to have customers say we're shutting down for 8 to 10 weeks. And to still keep people on the payroll and still try. And that's one thing I'll give my parents. And we have taken out notes. We've done a lot in the past to keep people on when the work isn't there. And so anything that Phil will speak about, we appreciate from the company. I know that we clearly exceeded our equipment budget by at least $400,000. And anything that was down on salaries is because honestly, those were employees that just didn't meet certain requirements of the company last year. And then they exited themselves. So are there any specific questions or anything I can speak to? Or just
Things looking better now?
I think that things are looking better. I think that the more that people can go back to work, and I think the more that companies try to figure out How can we still get production done? How can still people, do their own part to stay healthy, but also be cognizant of everyone else around them will help. I also think that realistically, the rest of the world's figuring it out. A lot of our raw materials come from Europe. A lot of our raw materials come from different parts of the States where things are still heavily on lockdown, et cetera, et cetera. So I think as long as we do our part, Alan, at least we can say, we're doing what we can. I know that we've even gone to where we've even tried to drive further. So now even going into the state of Michigan to service customers, when UPS is or isn't, or when they're on lockdown and only they allow certain people. So I can at least say from our standpoint, we are going further past kind of what we thought we typically would. But I think that things are slowly picking up. I think, but as long as everyone stays diligent and just being mindful that it could change overnight, and just being realistic. But yes, I'm definitely encouraged, or at least I'd say that trying to stay positive.
Right.
Yeah.
I think we have the what's the word I'm looking for? Flexibility to designate that a company is in significant compliance. It doesn't have to be a literal compliance where every number exceeds what was promised years ago before anyone ever dreamed of the pandemic. And my advice or my thinking is that we're going to see throughout these that 2020 was a challenging year where it was difficult to have numbers, maybe what were projected in prior years. My opinion would be that we move forward with essentially a blanket waiver for any company that did not meet any numbers in 2020 due to the pandemic, that no living person other than a few centenarians that may have been alive in 1918 can say that they had lived through. So the fact that your numbers are as good as they are, I think is amazing, and you're to be commended for battling through a pandemic that unlike anything anyone's ever seen. Any other questions for Jordan or for Phil? So why don't we take up, so we've got two. We have Philip Saw and Tool, and then we also have the Chenoweth Real Estate Holdings. I think we should probably take those one at a time. So I'd entertain a motion on the Philip Saw and Tool.
So moved.
To approve?
Yes.
Okay, motion to approve by Clark, a second by Jake. All those in favor, raise your right hand. Motion carries 6-0 with Jeff abstaining. And then for Chenoweth Real Estate Holdings.
Motion to approve.
A motion by Jake and a second by Mike to approve. All those in favor, raise your right hand. Motion carries 6-0 as well. Jeff, again, abstaining. Thank you, Jordan, for the update.
Next, I would move to Bailey. Bailey Real Estate Holdings has two projects with abatement right now: a 2012 warehouse expansion and then a 2015 warehouse expansion. The Bailey projected at the time 4 new full-time employees, and they're actually up 53.
Wow.
Bailey has a little bit of an advantage in that these are kind of older, so there's been more growth as they've moved on. But they've added a lot more employees, and payroll has grown from a little over 2 million to about 5.4 million. So even with the pandemic, which did affect Bailey, they've still exceeded the numbers from the 2012 and 2015 agreements. They were affected by COVID. Subaru was affected, which affected NHK, which affected Bailey. It just kind of flows through. But Bailey still had a pretty strong year, and they're still in substantial compliance. So we request that be approved.
Okay, well, let's take up the two Bailey CF1s. Again, I guess I would note we've been very fortunate here locally in that much of the slowdown has disproportionately impacted service-based businesses, and so our manufacturing base in this particular recession has been much less compromised than other recessions, and we see that with some of the numbers Phil reflects here on Bailey Trucking. So Bailey Real Estate Holdings LLC up first. I'll entertain a motion.
Motion to approve.
Second. A motion by Clark, second by Jeff. All those in favor, raise your right hand. Motion carries 7-0. And then let's see, is there two Baileys? No, I'm sorry. Then the other one is NHK. I'm sorry, I jumped ahead a little bit there, Phil.
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought we had two.
Do we?
Well, there was
Yeah.
the 2012 and the 2015.
No? Yeah, I must have missed one in my stack here. seeing a bunch of NHKs, I'm not seeing another. They were stuck together.
I have extras.
Yeah, they might have been stuck together. So the way Jay did it was at the top
Yep,
of each
they
of
were.
them, it's
I've got-
2012.
I picked them up together, I'm sorry. So yeah, so what we just, the first one that we just did was the 2012 project.
Yes.
So let's be specific in the minutes, if you would, that motion previously was for the 2012 project, now for the 2015 project. Same company, Bailey Real Estate Holdings.
Motion to approve.
Motion by Jeff, second by Ron. All those in favor, raise your right hand. Motion carries 7-0. Okay, sorry about that.
No problem, thank you. The last one is NHK. They also have two projects in front of you right now, a 2017 project for a new warehouse for sub-assembly and cross-docking. The actual cost of the warehouse fell very close to the projected cost. They estimated an increase of 40 employees, and the actual increase has been 278. And wages have increased by 8.9 million. And then the 2020 project is currently incomplete. The estimated completion, I think, was at the end of 2020, but there's COVID delay, and then the certificate of occupancy hasn't been issued for the building yet because of no water and sewer. And while while employment is up for NHK, payroll is actually down, and they attribute that to COVID, that there have been shutdowns flowing through from Subaru, as mentioned in Bailey. But we believe that they are in substantial compliance, and they would ask for the approval of their two CFOs.
Well, those of you that have come to these meetings many times over the years know that I almost give an annual speech where I cite NHK as the poster child for how a tax abatement is supposed to work, and a partnership between the public and private business, and it continues to be a shining star of our industrial park and growth in the community. I can also report that 2020 project is nearing completion. The water is on now to the facility. They do have the ability to pump waste out through a lift station. So I think we're continuing to move we're very close to getting that project online. So we have it's like multiple NHK. I see 5 different ones here. So I think on my stack, the first one is the 2020 project.
Motion to approve.
Okay, I have a motion by Jeff.
Second.
Second by Jake. All those in favor, raise your right hand. Motion carries 7-0. There's another 2020 project here. I don't know if that's the same copy. Does it look like the same numbers?
I think, yeah, it should be just 2017 and 2020.
Okay, so I must have gotten extra copies here. So then the 2017 project, I'll entertain a motion on that one.
Motion approved.
And a motion by Mike.
Second.
Second by Jake. All those in favor, raise your right hand. Motion carries 7-0. I also have in my stack several other items, and if you'll notice, those say those are Frankfort City Council.
Yes,
So
I
think-
inadvertently put those
I think
in
those
there.
got in our
Sorry.
stacks inadvertently, so this is all that we had to do on the county side. Bill, anything else you need from us?
No, sir.
Do you want signatures now, or can I sign after the meeting and get them to
After the
you?
meeting's fine.
Okay.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right,
Oh, those are city, yeah. We'll see.
next up, Daryl Sanders, drive-through vaccination tents. And we have Daryl has left us a packet of some information here, so we'll want to refer to that.
There's a pack there, and also there's a quote in there for 8 of them, and there's a quote in there for 6 of them, the drive-through. And what these will do will free up the building, and it'll also make it easier for people that are handicapped and can't stand in line. They can just pull right out, make their reservations, pull right out, get their shot or get their test, and then drive it through like for 15 minutes. I talked to the health department. I don't think Rodney's
Yeah, I was
here.
looking to see if Rodney was here, but I don't see
He
him.
will be here. This mainly is to support the health department, to tell you the truth. They also could be used later on if we had a disaster somewhere where we had to hand out water, blankets, that type of stuff. So these could be utilized for various different things. It'd just be an asset that we would have. Right now, if they plan on doing a outside vaccination, they have no structure, it's raining or it's cold. With these units, they have a place to store their shots, their paperwork. And I think if you look in there, it shows the pod system, how it's set up. There's 3 different types of pods, but that mainly a drive-through situation where you can get your shots for your COVID-19.
I did speak to Rodney real briefly and told him this would be up for consideration. I was hoping he was going to be here to speak to it. I know that my only question, Daryl, is that when we spoke earlier on the phone, the number you talked about then was 4 of the units, and now this quote is for 6 and 8.
Originally it was 8, and I told you I knocked down 6, I believe, maybe up to 7. But 6 of them, we'd like to have one at each school in case we could. It would take fewer manpower with this than it would to actually having somebody in the school. So Rodney should have been here to kind of help. I'm mainly getting the equipment for Rodney. I'm not by no means my health expert, but as far as logistics, that's part of my job. So this was just another tool we were trying to get for them to take care of the taxpayer, make sure that they got the shot. When more shots become available, we can inoculate more people.
And my only other question was going to be that I know we had allocated money previously for the trailer.
Right.
And I know that there's been some delays for components, just like everything else, on getting the trailer, so I'm not sure.
I talked
Josh,
to him
have
on
you-
the phone last week. I had talked to the gentleman that owns the company. He told me 5 weeks.
Okay,
And the main reason being some of the equipment, can't find plywood right now. And some of the equipment that they need for the trailer itself comes from overseas and it was clogged up with the canal problem. So.
Are the
I told
tents
him,
immediately
I'd like to
available?
add this when we need it, but,
Are these immediately available? The
yes,
tents?
yes, these can be available. If I order them this week, I'll get them by the end of the week or first next week.
Okay.
The immunizations, is it ramping up or ramping down? I would think it'd be going down as far as giving shots, or where are they at?
Ramping up.
It's going up.
Yes, yeah, Rodney, sorry, I want to butt in.
Right, yeah.
Rodney told us at our last meeting that he was working on expanding it late last week to the point where they're going to be giving 1,500 vaccinations a week, where we had been in the neighborhood of, I think we were like at 270 or something like that. So now that there's a broader group that are eligible, they're overwhelmed. So that's why I sent out.
I think a lot of times
asking
they were having trouble getting the vaccine itself.
Yeah.
They were only getting like 500 doses. That's all they could get for the county.
The other thing Rodney had indicated to me was that I think it's fair to say now, or it's becoming more apparent now, that there will be booster shots, maybe needed on a regular basis. So we may have to go through this again next year, or whatever. So the money is there. This would be coming out of that $1 million we got last year in the CARES Act. We've only spent a portion of that. We have some available, and obviously it's first and foremost a primary purpose was for COVID-related expenses, so we could certainly do this. My only hesitation is I'd really like for Rodney to say whether he wanted 6 or 8. To me, 6 seems like enough, but I'm not involved in that response at all. So, Josh, do you have any clue?
I don't. 6 isn't enough. Can we just get 2 more?
I would think so.
Yeah, we'll come back.
I had a conversation with Rodney, and of course, maybe something came up, but he was to be here to present the health department side of it, and that's the number we came up with originally.
It was 8?
So, yeah.
Okay.
But that was in the best case scenario, to tell you the truth. So it's a matter of getting the vaccine, being able to administer it to a large amount of people. It's possible. If we have the EMA went ahead and bought the cones, we're working with the sheriff's department. They're going to be the ones that set up the logistics of how to set the drive-through up. We will be supporting the health department in any need, but the health department will actually be organizing the shots itself. As far as logistic wise, where we're going to have it and how we're going to set it up, that's between the police department, sheriff's department, EMA. So we're here to help the health department take care of the people. So that's the best plan we have right now.
They have left the camp or the fairgrounds, haven't they? Are they still out at the fairgrounds doing shots still?
Yeah,
They haven't
yes.
left that yet?
No, not yet. I think once school's out, you will see them move to a school building so they can have more room. And then at the fair, that way, then also the fair council can rent their building out and try to
I think
get some
that's
income.
part of the reason we're going to the drive-through also, was not only for people that aren't able to stand in line, but to free up that building.
Right.
So we're trying to work together, all the entities.
I'd like to make a motion that we approve up to eight tents.
Yep. Which would be $31,119.20 to be paid for out of the CARES money, correct?
Yes.
Yep.
Second.
Okay, I have a motion by Jeff and a second by Mike. Any other questions for Darrell? All right, seeing hearing none, all those in favor, raise your right hand. Motion carries 7-0. Good to
Thank
go.
you. The only other thing I throw in there for some of the councilmen that may not know it, over the last 14 years, there's a list of the grant monies that EMA has brought in, of the equipment. We were originally ones that brought in the 800 megahertz radios for law enforcement and the computers. We got a grant for that. The total grant money that we've generated over the last 14 years is $1,271,572.78. And out of that, $500,645 was cash that we got back reimbursed plus the city. So that just gives you a little idea of where we're at.
Are you aware in the most recently passed stimulus, is there anything that you've seen outside of the money that was just kind of given to the county? Is there an EMA pod or anything that you've noticed that?
Not right now, they're slowing down, but we do have plenty of PPE in case this does take a nosedive. And mainly we furnish PPE for the first responders, whether it be law enforcement or EMS. So we do have hand sanitizer, Lysol, that type of stuff. We have it stockpiled in case we would have to use it in case this thing goes south on us. So that's all I have. Thanks, gentlemen.
Thanks, Darrell. All right, next on the agenda, Dan Sheets, County Surveyor. Schneider Geospatial Agreement.
Dan Sheets.
The exhibit I'm passing down there now is an example of the 1962 maps.
Okay.
All of the greens were hand-drawn on those maps from the original descriptions. We also have the 1972 maps as well. And what we want to do is put those on our Schneider Slide Beacon site. The cost for doing that would be $3,870. I propose to take that money out of plat books. This is directly related to plat books that will not have an effect on the general fund. The only thing plat book money can be used for is things like this. So with that, I would ask that we allow Schneider to host these photographs and aerial maps on their sites.
Okay. I can speak from personal experience. This is something you and I have sat at your desk and looked at over time as we try to
We use them all the time.
troubleshoot a problem to see what it did look like historically compared to current.
Yeah, that's a full map section. Usually we zoom in a little more, so it's a little harder to see the lines on there, but they are on there if you look very closely.
I'm certainly in favor of adding that functionality. Do I have a motion?
I'll make that motion.
I think I've got Mike with the motion to support. So that would be that expense out of plat book. So a motion by Mike and a second by Clark. Any other questions or everybody feel comfortable with that? All those in favor, raise your right hand. Motion carries 7-0. Thank you for bringing that to our attention. Chris Overman, Parkview Director, Fire Alarm. We heard a little bit about this last month. Does that mean?
Before we get into this, I just want to throw a couple things out there. Excuse me. When I first came on board in 2014, I was asked to look at every aspect. One thing I looked at, Stanley Security, their annual contract for monitoring service calls and then annual inspection was $4,500, which I thought was exorbitant. So I called them in, 2 salesmen came in. I voiced my concerns. They reduced it right there in the office, $2,800. That's your tax on. So anyway, we've had nothing but problems with them. They came in and gave us a quote to update the equipment. Well, they didn't realize you touch that equipment, it's no longer grandfathered. They came in at like 22.5, and when I looked at it, it was only half the system. So that was 2015. That went out the window. It wasn't going to be sufficient. We're up to 3,000 now annually, which is $250 a month. And again, that just covers monitoring and service costs. We've had a lot of issues. Called on the weekends, it's on their end. Our system's green, it's a go. And took 2 months to come out there. Then when they finally got out there, they said it was an act of God. I said, which day did it thunder? You know, you tell me. And so they dropped the bill. But it's outdated. It is grandfathered. Anything you do to it is going to have to be brought up to code. Smoke detectors, life expectancy is like 10 years. These are older than that. The heat detectors are 12-foot ceilings. Building would be burnt to the ground before the heat got to them. Pull stations are outdated. Horns and strobes, wrong heights. I mean, this thing's a mess. It's a safety issue. Panels from the 80s. Then I had the engineer come out last year, and he walked the whole building. We mapped it out. We went through every closet, every door in the room. He said, I called him after 2 weeks, I didn't get a quote. He said, well, you're talking between $50,000 and $80,000. He wouldn't even quote. He just kept harping on, we have to pull wire. Well, yeah, I get it. So anyway, if you look at the quote we got from Apex, flip to the first page. Everything's going to be replaced. It's going to be updated new. There's going to be additions, which are cover the actual building from the attic to the basement. You see the quote price. That's everything installed, new wire, up to code. We no longer have to worry about being grandfathered. You look at the inclusions down there at the bottom, replace the entire system, control panel, and all devices, update the locations, and add new notification appliances, meet code. That's the big key. And then low frequency horns in the bedrooms. That's an issue. I mean, obviously this building's 103 years old this month. I don't know when, probably in the 80s, that system was put in. Those need to be in those rooms to warn those individuals, the residents. And then pull stations will be code, which they do not, obviously, and then all new wire. If you look at the last page, this will be to pull those phone lines, which is going to go, the monitor to be $39.95 a month. Now that only includes monitoring. But if you look at the fact that they're coming out, I started looking at the reports. They weren't even doing pull stations and audits, so they were falsifying reports. There were several things on there, and the engineer from Stanley pointed it out to me. So he told on themselves. So they're not even doing the monitoring. So if you look at what we're going to end up with, in the long run, we're going for $250 a month. Apex will come out and do a 2 to 4 hour inspection of the entire system annually. With 2 guys, they'll be there half a day. They'll make sure the system's in check. Even with that, from $600 to $800 for that annual inspection, $40 a month. We're paying $3,000 now. You're talking $1,200 to $1,300. Initial savings about $1,700 a year right off the bat. Again, I can't emphasize enough. It's a safety issue. But the big thing I want to talk about, that's a 103-year-old building. Those bones are solid. That building, you know, is the second one. I mean, I don't want y'all to change it from a county home, obviously, but I want you to look in the future. I mean, they could pave the parking lot in the back, office space. That building's solid. And so now you have a safe, you know, security system in there. And then if this bond issue goes through, we're talking about replacing the boiler and the chiller. You got a building that'll be viable for another 100 years. So that's something I want you guys to keep in mind.
Chris, excuse me. I can speak very highly of Apex. I use it at our shop, but I'd like to see a second quote if you go ahead and give us one.
If I get Stanley, Jeff, they wouldn't give me one. The guy, I don't think he wanted to quote it, but I can tell you they were 50 to 80,000. I could try to get the guy to give me one. I don't know, and I'll do that for you, no problem. I'll see if Stanley will come through. If not, I'll try to find it.
I mean, if this was just private, you and me, I'd say call John.
Yeah.
But where I'm sitting, I'd like to represent everybody and say, let's see.
That's fair enough.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Tom, I guess to piggyback on that, are we at the threshold where it's required to have multiple bids?
What is the amount?
35,000.
You're below 50,000 and below. You can employ any kind of means of purchasing, and that would be more commissioner based than the council based, but the limit is 50. That's anything under that small, considered small purchases.
Okay. We're fortunate to have a company like Apex in the community. And I guess one thing I want to point out is in the time that Chris has been in charge of that building, he saved us 15 times as much amount of money, if not more, with his good administration. So I've said to Chris, if you ever need anything, you come to the council and we'll make sure that you get what you need, because I have such a belief in your management out
Well, I
there.
appreciate
So,
it. And I've said before, we're not trying to improve, we're trying to maintain it.
right.
We're not doing anything to add more cost.
All right, so do you believe it would be very difficult to get another quote?
I can call him, but I don't know. This guy was an engineer. We walked that building, we mapped the whole thing, every closet, 36,000 square feet. And I had to keep calling the guy, and he said, well, I don't think you can afford this between 50 and 80,000, because you got to put wire. But I can call him today and try, Jeff, and at least get a letter, something.
I guess my thinking, Jeff, is that if it's going to be a formality where it comes in twice as high, I don't want to delay the project for a month.
I absolutely agree with what you're saying, Jeff. But I'm just going to throw out that we had already made the decision at our last meeting to go ahead and go with Apex pending funding.
So that does change the nature of it.
Sure, absolutely.
Yes.
I applaud Jeff for bringing it up. I know that John's a businessman. He understands his position here on the council. He takes that very seriously. I think it's really just important that we're having this conversation right now in public meeting.
And if you could,
that's really the meat of it. So,
if you guys want to put that caveat on the funding that we seek a second estimate, that's fine. I don't think none of us are going to argue with you on that. So it's completely up to you guys.
so I don't have a problem with Apex. I just think we need to tell the public that we're looking at that as we look at any kind of bids from anybody.
I think we're doing this, to be completely transparent here. We know we have an owner of Apex that's on the council. He'll abstain from the vote, obviously. We've made it perfectly aware. We've sought a second opinion who chose not to quote. I don't see any reason. I mean, this is a eminently qualified business to do this. This is not anything inappropriate in my mind. So I'm comfortable entertaining a motion to approve if you all that we move forward with that we have to advertise this funding, so it wouldn't officially be appropriated, but we could give our consensus to support the signing of the contract by the commissioner. I'll make a motion. I have a motion by Jeff. I think I've got Jake there with the second. All those in favor, raise your right hand. Motion carries 6-0 with John abstaining. So thank you for that report and work.
All right, so let me make sure I understand. We're good to go. Do I still need to call them?
No.
Okay, I just want to make sure, cover my bases.
I think what we're saying, Chris, is we're considering that conversation you already had, those numbers they gave you orally is to be that second.
Okay, good. I just want to make sure. Thank you.
Thanks, Chris.
Okay. Next on the agenda, Resolution 2021-01, which is a resolution to rescind a prior resolution, 2017-05. I know, Josh, I think you'd like to have an opportunity to speak to that.
Yeah, as you guys are all aware now, apparently we've asked the court to take control of the commissary expenditures until we can see a conclusion to the State Board of Accounts and the state police investigations into that topic. While we have asked the court to do that, we also would like to ask you guys to go ahead and rescind the ordinance that's being used to authorize the expenditures that are outside of what state statute allows. So I think when you guys did this back in 2017, it was for a roof. We had to use the commissary funds then to pay for the architect, I believe, and rainy day to pay for the roof. So there was no sunset on that. We were respectfully asked that you rescind it. So
this would be a reset to state default.
Correct. According to state statute, there are certain things that commissary funds can be and cannot be spent on. I guess this doesn't say what they can't do, but it says what they can't be, and authorizes it through the state law. So anything above and beyond what those statutory limitations are has to be authorized by you guys, which is what you did back in 2017.
So to be clear, we're not saying we would prohibit or prevent any future spending. It's just gonna, that any discussion would have to come back for us for an up or down vote on its own merits.
That's correct.
Yeah.
That's correct. And that's all I've got on that, guys, unless you have questions.
No, and you've all seen the resolution. It's very simple, basically just a language saying that we're rescinding the prior resolution. You've heard the explanation for why that request is being made. I'd entertain any questions or discussion that any member has.
Make a motion, go ahead and rescind it.
Okay. Have a motion by Mike. Do I have a second? Second. Second by Ron. All those in favor, raise your right hand. Motion carries 7-0. Anything else related to that topic that either of you care to bring before the council?
Yes, just briefly and follow up with what Josh was speaking about. As you do know, the county did file for injunctive relief in reference to one of the issues was expenditure of commissary funds. We have, since that point in time, there have been filings that have challenged standing. For the county, we think we're fine, but obviously that's up for a court to decide. However, we feel that it would only strengthen our standing if the council would join in as party plaintiffs. And that would also show a unified front from both council and commissioners. And so my ask here today would be that you join in, pass a motion that you would authorize me to join the county council as party plaintiffs along with the commissioners of the county.
Okay. Thank you, Tom. Any questions or comments or concerns from council with regard to that? My understanding then is that it would be council joining on board with the commissioners for supporting the complaint, which would be in support of the furthering of the investigation to make sure that we have a very clear understanding of what's happening in those with regard to the sheriff's commissary fund. Correct? Okay.
I would make a motion.
I'll second.
Motion to enter as an additional party plaintiff.
Yes.
Okay, I have a motion by Jeff and I have a second by Clark. All those in favor, raise your right hand. Motion carries 7-0. Thank you, Tom. Okay, that moves us on to old business. Additional appropriations. Bear with me just a moment. Okay, we got quite a list here today. So Clark, help keep me I'll try. You follow along there on that. Beginning in County General, we've got 4 items in County General, 1 each in each of the categories, 01, 02, 03, 04. In the 04 category, top on my list is $400,000 for the East Side EMS building. You'll recall we've talked about this for several months. And we're to the point, if you've driven by there, there's activity going on now. The building is, the site prep is well underway. So we need to get money in line so that we can start paying those bills. Any update on the townships?
Yeah, we have the interlocal agreements in hand. As you know, there's going to be 6 separate ones that we're going to enter into, and they all have various amounts. We're just in the process of approving those at our next meeting. So we're waiting. We've got 2 or 3 of them in. We're waiting to get the rest so we can just do them all at once. So far, I know for sure I've got commitment for 22.5, but I fully expect to get the full $100,000 amongst the 6 of them. They've taken it. The way the math is adding up, there was one township that just didn't have the ability to spend any money, and they were only at 5,000. So the rest of the townships were able to boost theirs up a little bit to get to that full 100. So okay. I expect that at our next, hopefully our next meeting or the first meeting in May.
Okay.
So I was just emailing them this morning, and one gentleman came for the meeting, and because he actually had his check in hand and the interlocal agreement, and I said, well, hang on a minute, we got to vote on it first.
Right.
So anyway, we got 1 check already.
That's encouraging. I like to see that, hear about that partnership. So that's the big number there under the.
So how much total are the townships chipping in?
My hope is, Clark, 100K. amongst the 6 of them. I don't know that for sure yet. I don't want to promise it to you, but that's my gut feeling, is that's what we're going to get.
And Greg, if you refresh my memory, I want to say that the estimated budget was 450, somewhere in there. So this gives us a little wiggle room for an overrun if we see one. So
Right. I think, Greg's proven, and we've proven, in the past, that we're not going to spend it just because it's there. We'll turn it back in. I mean, I think we had money left over from our first 2 projects that we actually used for some of the items on this project. So
I personally, the residents of that area, have had several people, once they learn what that is, they're really excited.
Yeah.
They know that we're out there with a long response time. So I think we've got good public support. Okay. The next one on my list is there's $46,311.57. That's for the EMA training facility that we've talked about. That number encompasses more than what we gave our verbal consent to last month. But you'll see in the listing that the difference is donations that we've received, and that we would be appropriating into an item so that they could be spent. The council's commitment that we gave verbally to Matt Stidham last month was for $40,000. Next up, $20,000 legal services in the prosecutor's department for some additional legal fees that may or may not be needed beyond anything that was budgeted. $6,000 for mobile clinic EMS staff. And Greg, I may ask you to just quickly give the explanation you gave to me about why that is needed.
Sure. We had different occasions for that. We have individuals that need to be present for the vaccine, not only for the shots that are given, for the testing, and also for the vaccine in case there's an allergic reaction. It's mandated by the state. So on the outside areas where the vaccine was being given, we had personnel present on certain days to provide that service, to give a shot of epinephrine if there's an allergic reaction. As long as they're at the fairgrounds, we've just been using the ambulances because they're so close. But when they do an outside site, and they're even moving towards doing at-home vaccinations. So there's a listing now coming in from the state of Indiana of people who are homebound that would like to have the vaccine. So working on a program to get that vaccine in the home. So that money would be used for people who come in and provide those services while the vaccine is taking place. And as an update, when the council approved the additional money earlier in the year about personnel that we might need, we used that extra money for one 24-hour shift, and that's all we needed to add those additional funds to. So that was good. We had people pick up the slack. So this program is providing EMS personnel at the scene as needed for the vaccine clinics.
And Greg indicated to me to the extent possible, you're attempting to do this within the confines of your regular budget, but it's just limited to how far you can dip.
Yeah, because we're trying to use personnel that are on duty. The problem with that is once you get the vaccine, you're supposed to stay there for 15 minutes to make sure there's no reaction. So that put us at a disadvantage to have someone stay there and then get another call, which would kind of pull things out. So it was easier to have someone present to do that. So we've used that on a couple of different instances. And I think when we talked earlier, it's been right now, the cost of that's been below $3,000. So the projected cost to provide that personnel was $3,000 to $5,000. And we don't use it every day, but when it's needed, we provide that person. So
thank you for that. I just wanted everybody to be clear on what that was related to. And then 2 more. Last county general, $16,000 for time clock. And you'll recall we've had this discussion over a period of months as well, and it's just now to the point of getting implemented. When we were entering our new time management system, we determined we needed 2 additional units, and we had earlier given our consent to do that to make sure we had units where we needed them everywhere throughout county government, and so that's finally showing up here in the additional appropriation. And lastly, another thing we talked about, I'm sorry, we do have one more. $50,000 for the Sheriff's Department for the repairs line item. We had a pretty in-depth discussion about that last week. We repaired a couple of items, a plumbing item and a overhead door for the lower level. We used money that was already in the budget for repairs, but the original repair line item was designated for a different purpose, HVAC controls, so we needed to replenish that line item, and that's what this appropriation does. Yeah, and then lastly, Parkview Home, $77.30, and that's a rebate check that we're appropriating back. I'm sorry, we've got one more for Parkview. That's another rebate check, $27.44. Apparently an overpayment on an equipment purchase, as I read it. Okay, so that is the total, for a total out of county general, $541,132.87. I think every one of them, with the exception of those rebates we had talked about previously. Next on CDIT is one that we can actually deny, and so I may go ahead and take a vote on that one. Now it's for an easement payment, but as Britt and I discussed, that easement payment needs to come out of the bond anticipation notes, not from CDIT. So we can deny this one, and I guess I would entertain a motion to go ahead and bring that up now. Motion by Jake and a second by Mike to deny the CDIT request for $36,375. All those in favor, raise your right hand. Motion carries 7-0. So when we vote on the additional appropriation ordinance, it will be with this one amendment. Community corrections, thinking for a change, or no, this is from the program funds, $25,000 for a new vehicle. Brett, this is for your department, correct?
Correct.
Sometimes we've used monies for here, and you've helped out with other departments, but this is for community corrections, $25,000. Hume Courthouse, we had a second snow event, that most recent snow event, and so we had have a cost share agreement with the nickel plate flats across the road, so they sent us a check for $2,587 to help pay for the snow removal. So that's going back into that snow removal, landscaping, mowing line item. Local road and street, do you have an update for me on this one, Britt?
Yes, we do need to appropriate.
Okay. We talked about this last year, and apparently we just didn't get it in the budget, but we gave our consent to move forward with a Patcher lease. You may remember Kevin making that presentation, but apparently we did not get that into the budget. So we need to make that appropriation for that lease payment of $25,858. Recorder's Perpetuation Fund, $835. This is for book repairs, so exactly what that fund is for. You'll note that Beth notes that we did not do any repairs in 2020, so she's anxious to get back. She had $2,000 in the budget, but doing 2 years in once, she's going to go over that line item, and we're just requesting an additional $835. Got a couple of requests here from statewide 911 from Renee. $20,000 from cash to part-time and $1,500 from cash to Social Security and Medicare. And you can see from the explanations we've had a lot of part-time employees here that we've utilized that part-time budget heavily, and so.
I hate to jinx it, you know, as it always goes, but we are completely at full staff. So one of our part-timers just moved to full-time, and then we actually have a part-timer. So like I said, I hate to jinx it, but it's been a long time.
Yeah.
So thankful for that.
That is related to the labor situation. Then you'll see there's a second for $6,624, and that is related to you'll recall that the antenna that we use is on the top of the water tower here on the near west side, and that needed to be removed for some work that's being done on the water tower per the interlocal agreement that we have with utilities. That's to be done at our expense, and that expense to take it off and put it back on is the $6,624. So that makes a total for 911 at $28,154. Then drain maintenance. These are nice. These are checks that Dan has received where a particular drainage district crosses county lines, but the majority of it is in Clinton County. So the county that also participates sends Dan a check for their portion of drain maintenance funds. You'll see that we've received those checks from Boone County and Carroll County for various drains. and that totaled $1,354.23. Next one, Sheriff Sale Administration Fund, $5,000. So there's money, there are costs involved with administering the sheriff sale. We have a vendor that helps us with that. That's to pay those vendor fees. Landfill, $72,800. And I'm going to pause here real quick. I'm going to let Liz speak to this one so we have a full context and picture. You'll recall that last month we talked fairly in depth about the Manson Elevator project. In the intervening days between last month's meeting and now, we went to bid. We gave a verbal consent not to exceed $50,000, and Liz is going to give us a quick update on how those bids really turned out.
Good morning. All right, so as Alan stated, the commissioners reached out for bids. We received 4 back from a variety of companies. It was actually an interesting bidding process for us because 2 of those companies were local names that we see frequently. 2 were completely out of state, never heard of them. They were actually our highest 2 bidders. So the highest one that we had was Green Demolition Contractors. They actually work mostly in northern Indiana and Chicago, although they do have contracts down through Indianapolis as well. Because I hadn't heard of them, I not only reached out to them, but I asked for references, and I called each of those references and spoke to them. And the company has been around quite a while. I think the longest person I talked to had worked with them for like 18 years. The rest were kind of in the neighborhood of 10 to 12. They have a reputation for being able to handle difficult demolitions. For us, the elevator is difficult, but the scope of difficult in this case would be like removing everything from the inside of a 7-story building without allowing the walls and the ceiling to fall, while having city traffic in Chicago on all sides that you don't want to kill. So water towers, emergency demolitions in Chicago, they're a contractor that's used frequently up there. I think their bid is competitive. Well, of course, we would always want the lowest amount that we could possibly spend. The fact that local contractors who normally have very competitive bids, and I have no reason to believe didn't think that they submitted competitive bids in this round as well, were $40,000 or more higher than this bid. I did ask the gentleman, what interested him about our project, just because it seemed odd. And he actually said his wife is actually interested in some of the materials, and he's got some projects on the side in his personal life. And so he had reasons he found this project particularly appealing. He believes that he could have a crew down here and have it done in 7 to 8 days, and the site completely finished up. I do not personally think, and the commissioners have other thoughts, they can certainly add them, but if we tried to rebid this, I don't believe we're going to see a better range of bids. I think we're probably going to see the same bids from the local contractors. We may or may not see some of these other contractors join in or not. I do think there's another side to this, which hopefully under department head reports I'll talk about a little bit more. Yeah. But we have discussed in the past the fact that we're working on a grant request for the 3rd round of Next Level Trails. The money that is spent on this demolition can be used as part of our 20% match that we have to place with that, because this would become the trailhead is the parking area. It's not a usable site for any kind of housing or business, unless sewer were to someday be placed there because of the fact that the rail bed sits underneath it. My recommendation and the commissioner's motion at their meeting was that the goal would be to go ahead and accept this, assuming the council is willing to fund it. And I'll just move forward. This is at this point one of our oldest unsafe building cases that remains open, that we've been unable to deal with by some other means or by a tear down in the past. So it would also clean up a file that's taking quite a bit of staff time, because we have to every 3 months go out and recheck a site, even if we know kind of what's there, keep the files up. So I think that sums up. Unless you want more detail.
Well, we got those numbers in time that I was able to instruct Britt for our consideration to advertise that amount for that bid at $72,800. And so we have the ability to appropriate the money today and give the commissioners approval they need to move forward with getting that building cleaned out. But I wanted you to hear that she had followed up with the, you know, there was a qualified company that she had followed up with references and all. So 72,800 from landfill. We have the money. Landfill's revenues last year were record large. We have a comfortable cash balance that would allow us to do this. Surveyor user fee, $368.68. This is an invoice that the county initially paid for a professional service, but then the applicant reimbursed the county, so we're putting that money back into that line. Here's the next one from the Federal Inmate Housing Fund, $404,322.45. This is the vehicles that we've talked about before. What you'll notice is it's slightly higher than the initial number that we saw on the spreadsheet when reviewed, and the reason for that is that this is for 9 vehicles instead of 8. And the reason it's for 9 instead of 8 is that we had one vehicle totaled in an accident during the winter weather situation earlier in the winter. And since we have to replace that vehicle anyway, we added it to the Tahoe list. We'll subsidize this expenditure with the insurance reimbursement check that we get. And you saw in your packet, we expect that to be around $17,000. But ordering a new vehicle, it made sense to go ahead and order the vehicle that we're transitioning to.
Sheriff, where we at? I'll get those.
September.
Everything is late.
Yeah.
So, I mean, initial delays, I mean, and then we're in the same market with all other electronic products. If it's September, I look probably more towards December to January. I mean, I think we'll go, we'll be ordering other vehicles, waiting on these vehicles. So I think it's just the way it's going to work out with manufacturing at this point in time.
It's the same way with tractors, I can assure you. So
we may borrow your tractor. So okay.
Okay, there's that one. The next one. We have a grant here, an opioid grant through the probation department. We have several line items that we're going to appropriate there. $800 in incentives, $112,149 for training peer coaches, $1,000 for community outreach, $854.80 for mileage. I think that was it for that grant. So that totals for that grant we received through probation at $114,803.80. And then we have another grant, an MRT grant. I'm not sure what the MRT stands for, but it was one we did not use all of the funding for. And so we had $5,593.74 that we're writing a check back to DOC for the unused portion. And then lastly, our public defender reimbursement through circuit court. Judge Moeller's asking us to appropriate that check in the amount of $42,742.75 into the proper attorney line so that he can use it for future proper attorney expenses. And that is all of the additional appropriations. So we would entertain a motion to approve that subject to the one amendment that we denied the seated appropriation.
Make a motion to approve with the amendment.
Okay. Have that motion by Jake, and I think I had Jeff with the second. Any questions? That was a lot of, everybody clear on all of those? Okay, all those in favor, raise your right hand. Motion carries 7-0. Do we have transfers, Janet? I can't remember. Four. Highway Department, we've got a payroll adjustment, $16,034.40. We're adjusting from one position to another, from the 043 position to the 030 position. Another one is a salary adjustment, moving money from positions, $18,956 from the 003 position, 030 position to the 024 position. And then one more, $11,667.84 from the 0043 position to the 0030 position. So we're just realigning as we've had some shift of personnel over there, getting the money into the right positions. And then lastly, in health, $1,500 from extra assistant to operating supplies. And this is to cover expenses associated with the vaccine site. I would entertain approval of those 4 transfers. A motion by Jake. I think I've got, had Mike there with the second. All those in favor, raise your right hand. Motion carries 7-0. Quickly, before we get to department heads, any council reports? Oh, I'm sorry, I forgot one thing. Review of the financial report. We got that yesterday from Janet. It's on your desk here in front of you. Showing the current cash balances in all county funds. I'd entertain a motion to make a motion. Show that was accepted and reviewed. Motion by Jeff, second by Clark, that we receive that. All those in favor, raise your right hand. Motion carries 7-0. The State Board of Accounts likes that. Now, council reports. Anybody have anything to report?
I have one.
Sure.
I missed last month, so just now reporting I attended the Community Howard Health Advisory Board meeting in February and had a good meeting there. And I would just throw out there for anybody that's interested in mental health in here in Clinton County services and whatnot, that our next meeting is May the 19th. So if anybody would have any thing they'd like for me to bring up that meeting, commissioners, sheriff, anybody, let me know so I can have that in mind when I go to the meeting May the 19th.
Yes,
I
sir.
have one.
Okay.
Can you cover with, check with Community Howard, they're providing some mental health for work release inmates, and we have yet to get back, they've yet to get back with us to get that program started.
Okay.
So, and I mean, I have full faith that they're gonna follow through, but it is something that hopefully you can speak about. But it is a new program.
Yeah.
Appreciate it.
What's the gentleman's name that comes and presents to us?
Matt Oliver.
Oh, yeah.
And
Do you have regular communication with them?
Yeah, we do, and
Well,
our
let
jail
me-
staff just checked with them as well.
Okay.
I wasn't going to get into the weeds, but Matt Oliver was offered a better position with another entity, so they're in a transition.
So we're in a delay. Okay.
Okay.
So, but I will stay on that, Sheriff.
Thank you.
I don't know if there's a report, but I wanted to ask if anything happened on the coroner situation.
I haven't heard.
Okay. Okay. Anybody else?
I did speak with Ed Wright briefly at the fire department the other day. He said that the drain in that one particular room wasn't going to be able to be cleaned out, so they're going to have to dig and put a new one in. I don't know if you discussed that with you guys. I forget who he spoke with on that. I believe it was AAA maybe. I had to take a look at putting a new drain in. But beyond that, the room seems sufficient for projected cost.
Okay. Maybe a transition to commissioner reports is that I had a conversation with Josh, and there was a discussion about the roof repair quote or need for kind of an immediate movement on that. And so maybe I'll just, rather than me telling about the conversation we had, I'll just transition to commissioner reports. I know that was something that came up that may have to be accelerated.
Yeah, we were able to get Jaws out fairly quickly to give us an estimate, that it was timely because 2 days later they wound up coming back we had one of those driving rains out of the east, and there was literally water coming out of one of the can lights in Judge Hunter's courtroom while the court was going on. So that was not a happy judge that day, and I don't blame him. So they were able to get that fixed and give us an estimate. So we're just waiting on to decide which is the best course of action for us, because it's right at the threshold. It was at 146. So as you recall, when we were talking about the other projects, 150 is the threshold where you have to hire an architect.
Right.
So we're currently working on that, but it's in the works, and we're going to take care of that this year.
So what I was going to report was having that discussion, and Josh is very gracious to involve me early on in that discussion. We have a line item for courthouse renovations that was designed to be for the third floor, but clearly it makes no sense to renovate the third floor when there's still water coming in. So we shifted, reprioritized, and decided to take, they didn't need any approval from us. They had a line item to start working on that roof. But what it does is it dips into the money that was set aside for the third floor. So we'll have a decision to make at some point when we get to that point, when they get their quotes. It's likely to go over what we've budgeted.
Unfortunately, I think it will, because our initial estimates on the third floor were right at 350. So it would have jived with the 150, but we made some revisions at the suggestions of the judges who have to use and live on the third floor, and they made some very good suggestions about turning some rooms into restrooms and expanding those facilities so that, one, people didn't have to come up and downstairs to use the restroom. Two, they weren't exposed when juries were leaving, specifically Superior Court. They didn't have to walk through that tundra area, or the rotunda, not tundra, sorry. Rotunda. And there was no risk of them being exposed to anyone or anything like that. So we had a meeting with American Structure Point, Judge Mueller, Judge Hunter, and I kind of turned it over to them because, like I said, they've got to live up there to work. I don't know what goes on up there. Wouldn't have the first clue how to tell them how to design it. So we added a couple things. And it's expensive because these walls are all plastered. There's no vapor barrier. So what's happened up there is a 1-foot wallpaper on there that's not impervious. So it's not letting moisture through, so that's why it's peeling off. And then they painted on top of that. So paint's out of the question for all those walls up there. We have to find some kind of special wallpaper that lets moisture breathe through it. So that carpet were the big things up there. And then, like I said, the redoing the jury room that is currently there so that it's more spacious. Add the second jury room and actually add four restrooms up there. So,
any idea on when the new quote will be available?
That meeting occurred a couple of weeks ago, so it usually takes Structure Point at least a couple of weeks to turn things around when you expand the scope of work. I mean, that was over and above what they had originally been tasked to do. So I expect to hear from them yet this week.
If you could update us in May, I think that'd be, I'll try to stay in front of it.
And one other thing while I'm up here, you guys appropriated the money this morning for the training facility. I will tell you that it's already being constructed. I can send you guys some pictures. They're already putting floors in it, building some staircases and things like that for the portion that's going to be 5 stories high. So the gentleman out in Kirkland, Jeff Rusted, he's doing a great job and he's kind of spearheaded that with Matt. And, so
good.
It's being built as we speak.
Good. Okay. Great. Anything else from the commissioners? Jordan, anything you want to add? Yeah.
Good.
Great. I guess I'll add one other thing that I did appear at the last commissioners meeting, and I'm sure you all are aware since we last met, the Congress passed the American Recovery Plan, which gave some money to counties across the country, including Clinton County, and that process to be able to eventually, that money has to be spent by the end of 2024. So there's certainly no rush on deciding the highest and best use for it. Having said that, before you can use that, there needs to be an ordinance that's passed that by statute the commissioners will pass. And then anything in that ordinance needs to include a plan for how the money will be spent. But then, even though that's in place, the money can't be spent until it's appropriated by the fiscal body of the county. So, in other words, both keys have to turn to spend this money, and it's going to have really stringent documentation and accounting requirements that we're going to have to not just give to the state, but to the federal government as well for audit. So we're going to have to really keep very close track of it. So as we move forward with trying to determine what's going to be included in that ordinance and what's going to be included in that plan, I asked the commissioners to designate a person, and they designated Jordan to work with the council's budget committee, which is Jeff and Clark and Howland, and everything will eventually come before the whole body. But we can start the process, the very preliminary process of just making a list of, what could conceivably. What we're really waiting on is that the legislation itself had some categories that you could spend the money on. They appear to be at first blush to be pretty restrictive, but we're waiting on guidance from the United States Treasury Department that will flesh out with more explanatory language as to what those could be used for. When that happened in the CARES Act, everything became much more open versus what the initial language was. So we're hopeful that will in fact be the case. And once we have that language is issued, we can really kind of start to dive in on how that money can best serve the county and its citizens. So anyway, just a heads up that that's happened. There's no official action been taken yet. We're not ready for the official action yet, but we do have to have that ordinance by what, July?
I believe so.
So there is a first step or a first hurdle out to clear.
Will it be a joint ordinance that
No.
commissioners
Commissioners.
only?
It's a little bit unusual that the commissioners are going to create the fund, which is typically our role, but by statute, they have that
I
rule.
saw that.
They have that rule.
I just didn't know whether we had to sign. for
No.
it.
No, our role is that the money can't be spent without the appropriation.
Yeah, so they need us.
Both sides have to agree on the ultimate.
More than likely, we'll either at our next meeting or at the first meeting in May, pass that ordinance to get that ball rolling, because I think May 11th, we get our first distribution.
I'm glad you said that. That strikes them. So Josh and I had a call with Baker Tilly, and they sent us a proposed scope of work, an agreement to help guide us through. I mean, this is a very, very bureaucratic thing, and if we don't engage outside help like this, we're dumping another massive workload on our auditor's office that's already up to here. So Josh and I both felt like we wanted to move forward with that route, and I guess I would like to bring that to the council's attention and get at least a consensus that we are willing to hire a consultant and that we will fund that consultant. We can fund that out of the monies that we're getting, so it's not like it's going to dip into our existing budget. You want to add?
Yeah, I still want to talk back there. I wanted to add that also, not only, so we all know that Clinton County's portion is 6.2 million and some change, but that's not the only buckets of money that are available. And so that's why it was important to me and Alan that we engage someone who's more well-versed in these, in this American Rescue Plan. Baker Tilly's got somebody on this every day, Paige St. Son. I think she said she's the one that's studying it. So there are going to be other pots of money that are available to us, not just the 6.2. So, not to sound greedy, but it's my intention, and I think Jordan would agree that we want Clinton County to figure out every way that we can exhaust those other funds too. So we need to think big when we're talking projects. We're not talking roofs and HVAC and things like that. We need big thinking. So we're open to suggestions.
And as an example, Josh and I both heard that the state got a large chunk of money, and they're actively looking for people to apply for projects.
$300 billion the state has access to, and they don't know how to spend it. So I'll show where
we can help.
We've got a meeting, I think later this week, on Friday morning, we're going to get an idea started, so hopefully you guys all.
So there's a master services agreement, I believe, and then it has a specific, there were two recommendations made in our call. One was that let's do a master services agreement with Baker Tilly, and then that would establish Clinton County and Baker Tilly as a client relationship. Then there were two more specific scope of work agreements that they presented. One would come to the council, and that's the comprehensive financial plan. You recall that last year we wanted to update that, but that last year was such a mess that it made it very difficult to do what we wanted them to do. The suggestion is that we regroup, try to update that comprehensive financial plan now, because what it does is it helps us, it gives us the baseline of information that we can use on some of these grant applications or documentation that we have to show to the federal government. It shows where we are now versus before we start spending the money. So that was one suggestion, and then the second suggestion was just I guess, I don't know, bureaucratic administration and assistance through the American Rescue Plan, that itself. That one would be signed by the commissioners, and it would be to help us with all the administrative work that would need to be done and help us come up with the capital plan. It would help us identify other pots of money and what projects we might have that would fit in those pots of money. In other words, help us maximize the leverage of the federal and state funds that are available to help the county. So those are all going to come with fees, and they basically at this point say it's a time-based, time and wage. There's no not to exceed. There's whatever they get into is what we'd be willing to pay based on their wage schedule. But we would have this money that we can pay administrative costs out of that. So I wanted to get the council's consensus that we were willing to support moving in that direction so that the commissioners could sign the master services agreement, and then next month we would likely sign, or I would even entertain a motion to authorize me to go ahead and sign that an update to the comprehensive financial plan to commit for the council.
I'll make a motion for that consensus.
Okay, let's do two things. Let's do first to that we support engaging Baker Tilly for help with both the financial plan and the comprehensive or the American Rescue Plan.
Okay, I'll make a motion for that.
Okay, so I have that motion. Is there a second? So a motion by Jeff and a second by Clark. All those in favor, raise your right hand. And then I guess I'd ask for a more specific motion authorizing me to go ahead and sign the scope of work agreement for the comprehensive financial plan to update that for the council.
So moved.
I have a motion by Clark, second by Jake. All those in favor, raise your right hand. That motion carries 7-0. Thank you.
Will Baker Tilly have input for the orders,
Yes.
or the resolution? Because one thing I was thinking of is if there's some more directives to come from the Treasury that might not come out before you do the resolution,
Their
you
first-
need to leave.
Their
an
first
open
advice, Clark, has
door.
been to be very, very general.
Yeah.
Knowing they can always be amended.
Yes.
But the key part of passing the ordinance is it establishes the fund so that when Britt gets the check, the wire transfer, the direct deposit, we have a place for it to go. So we'll get that part in place. We'll put a very general, basically they said at first you can just say, we're going to use the money for any purpose authorized under the American Rescue Plan.
Very good.
Very general. And so then as that becomes more clear as to what those purposes are allowed, then we can start to get more specific with an amendment to the plan. Okay? Department heads.
I'll go first, so we can get in. Real quick, today was the start date for the sheriff's office to start providing COVID shots for the inmates and the remaining staff that wish to get that shot. And if you watch the news this morning and late last night, the FDA and the state of Indiana, and all government agencies have pulled that Johnson & Johnson single shot. So with that, we haven't administered any shots, and literally they were supposed to be there today at 9:30. So they canceled that, and we are going to work towards whatever other product was out there and see what the state guides us. But that was through the Indiana State Health Department to get that done. So really, that's the only thing that is hindering us is they pulled that shot. So
You're just now getting the vaccine?
What's that?
You're just now getting the vaccine for staff?
No.
Or was it for inmates?
This is for inmates.
I'm sorry. I
Inmates
misunderstood.
only.
I
Staff had
misunderstood.
the opportunity back in November.
Okay,
and-
that's what I
and
thought.
they still have that opportunity because now it's so open, and I think some people have waited to kind of see what these shots would do, things like that. But with that, for the inmates and for the rest of the staff that wanted the one shot, they got canceled because of the product being pulled. With that, the other end of the stretch of the plumbing, the water tanks, they're being installed as we speak. The plumbing and everything's going fine. And obviously, we're just waiting on the overhead door. There was a window of about 6-7 weeks before that product would be built and shipped and then installed. So hopefully in the next couple weeks, we'll see the new overhead door down in the basement. But the plumbing and the water tanks are being put in as we speak today. So there's a little bit of work, but those guys are hitting it pretty hard. Education program still moving on, graduates from the adult education program, and also through the drug program that we have there at the facility through our medical health for our medical providers. So with that, moving forward, I'd like to, and I think I've done it before, but Justin Rose is the new merit deputy, as well as Nevin Creasy is new merit deputy. Justin Rose is from Boone County, Thorntown area. He has already been through the Indianapolis Metropolitan Police Department Academy, so he's a certified law enforcement officer. He'll be out on his own before May 1st, and Nevin Creasy is brand new to law enforcement, and he's from here in the county, so he'll go to the academy maybe June, maybe January. We just don't know yet, as soon as we get an opening.
Those are general fund positions,
Yes, sir.
correct? Yeah.
Yes, sir. And then we do have an opening with general fund, and then we also have the other two openings through the federal. We haven't started that yet, so we're getting our ducks in a row, getting ready to advertise for that, and we'll let you know when we get those out the door and we'll get it advertised.
How are we doing on our count over there in the program?
I'll have to refer that to we're staying over 60.
Okay.
Our general population is staying between 160 and 170. Obviously, we have a 223 max. So, as far as, there's space, we're in good shape. And we're staying at, between 60 and 63. And then they fluctuate about every 3 months. We've got a pretty good turnaround on inmates out and inmates back in through the Federal Bureau of Prisons. So, running smooth.
Great.
Sure, just a question. The staff, the majority of people getting the vaccine?
Yes, I would say so. And that's like, I haven't particularly cared or kept a record of who or what. But those that want them jumped on it back when the state put out for the first responders, and we had an initial push of group. I would say that the majority of the merit deputies and the majority of the jail staff are vaccinated. And
New hires, or they have to, are you doing anything with the new hire as far as, I don't know what the county can do, is saying you have to, or
right,
it's up to you, or that kind of thing. It's different for me, so.
Well, it's a part of, it's not a part of their requirement to get hired, but with the exposure to all the different people and the things that they do, I mean, it's common sense, and so it's their choice still.
Okay.
So, but yeah, I would say the majority are vaccinated. We had a pretty good group of people that were waiting on this one shot through Johnson & Johnson, but I'm almost relieved to see that they pulled it, if there was that many issues, and if it's that broad nationally, then we'll wait on the next one shot. And the inmates, we want to keep them at that one shot because you don't know where they're going to be for their second shot, and that was the idea behind doing that. And that's all through the state health department. And I've talked to Rodney quite a bit about it, but so we'll see where we end up with if we're able to get another. I forget the other company that has the single shot, but we'll see where we're at. So.
Thanks.
The only question I had, you referenced in your earlier comments about how the lead time on the vehicles, and that we probably be ordering the next set before we even receive the first set, and that was my question. I know we have that planned, or it was in that in that budget. So how is the idea that we're going to order earlier than we normally would have in anticipation of that long time, or I guess help me with the timeline on when the second batch would.
The order banks are closed now. Everything that's been ordered for what not manufacturers, but the dealerships have in hand, they're getting those built and they're coming. That's where we're at. We were kind of at the last end of everybody's, so with the help of Commissioner Brewer, we were able to locate those up in Fort Wayne. And so when the order banks open up for the 2022 models or the continuation of 21s, I would imagine when they open up, they usually are September, October when they open those banks up to order. We need to be on that list so that we don't have that 10-month turnaround. So hopefully we're in that first initial bank of ordering, and that way they're coming at it 8 to 12 weeks instead of being at the last of them.
My thought that we're going to have to work through, or thinking, is that when you think back to how we had that, we have enough cash on hand to purchase them outright, but that's assuming we've collected money for the whole year.
Right.
So if that second set comes in May and we haven't collected the revenue for the whole year, there could be a short-term cash flow issue.
There won't be any orders unless there's cash in them.
Well, I guess I'm just saying, we need to think that through. There'll be a desire to move quickly and get on the list early, but we'll have to think through the payment side of it too.
Right. You don't have to pay for them until they're delivered.
Okay.
Yeah, so we don't have to make it in that payment, just like Commissioner, you had said. It's not until they're delivered we pick them up to the dealer.
So we would have time to build
that fund back up, or where it's at.
Right. That's how I understood it. Because it should be building until we get this first set.
Right.
So even though we did the appropriation today.
Okay. I guess I'm just saying, let's stay in touch.
Yeah,
and
we'll
make
have
sure that we
to
don't
run through our cash.
Still there.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Okay.
Thank you. That's all I had. If anybody has any questions, please call me and ask me.
Okay. Anything for Rich? Thanks, Sheriff.
You're welcome.
Any other department heads? I know Liz is still with us. Yeah. You alluded to your other topic, and if you'd like to speak to that, that would be.
Yes, this is a little bit related to what we talked about before. And as a general reminder, because it's been a hot minute, back before COVID started, days of relative lack of chaos, there had been a conversation both with the county commissioners and with the council about the fact that we were anticipating attempting to file a grant for Next Level Trails in the third round for the corridor between the trail currently under construction in Colfax, which is the Big Four, comes up from Indianapolis and will eventually reach Lafayette and Frankfurt. And both commissioners and council have given the go-ahead to start down that process. We hadn't really talked about the specifics. Then COVID hit, and the Next Level project's got all its funding pulled for a while. And then here just recently, the state's put the funding back into it. They've awarded the second round, and they've announced dates for application for the third round. So the rubber and the road are kind of coming together. One of the things that is a little bit different about this project is the fact that much of the rail bed has in fact been tilled under into farm ground. So attempting to follow it in its pure original path all the way through is not something that I would advise. It also happens to parallel Colfax-Manson Road, like within 100 foot in many locations. So the concept about has always been to sort of do what some would refer to as a complete street, but basically where you'd have your trail paralleling your road corridor and within the same right-of-way. So you minimize the amount of impact negatively on farmers and dividing land up. You also have good visibility, and it sits out in front, and we already have part of what we need. But what goes with that is we do anticipate and have all along that there'll be a little bit of acquisition that's paired with that. It's also a larger project in scope than going on top of an existing rail bed, because on a short list, we have 3 local bridges at least that I know of. Rick's gone. If there's another one that I failed to count, we've got the underpass under I-65. We've got to deal with State Road 52, which is a monster if it's in its own right. And then State Road 28, we're dealing with the right-of-way, and then there's an existing project coming in. INDOT is already a partner at the table. The degree to which they will be is still something that's in flux. However, they have already agreed to, and we have a match in terms of the overpass over Colfax-Manson Road. INDOT agreed in the 9th hour at their expense to go ahead and redesign their bridge to the maximum of the 48 foot the design would allow, to place the underpass for the trail underneath it. And if any of you have driven through that area since it's been constructed, you'll notice on the north side there is a large concrete barrier with metal guardrail on top. I've been in a car, but I guesstimate it's probably pretty close to this height all combined. Behind that is at its narrowest point an 8 foot wide area for the trail to run through. At its widest point, it gets close to 12 foot. Because of bridge design and the angle, we did have to narrow it a little beyond our ideal 10. The money that went into that can be part of our match with the state. I am working with INDOT. We've gotten ourselves down to 2 possible structures, but there is a possibility that they will be willing to donate a historic bridge for reuse to get over State Road 52, and they may also be willing to partner in terms of a partial or complete donation of labor and assistance in moving that, since it will go from one of their right-of-ways to one of their right-of-ways. That depends on a number of factors, like everyone. The fiscal bottom line is part of that. So the bridge that is selected and the cost they have to incur anyway to deal with it is going to figure into what they're willing to do. We're still working on that. And the State Road 28 right-of-way is something still to be discussed, and how that's going to tie into the current project. So all that to say, one of the requirements of the grant is we've got to have a 20% match. INDOT's going to help us substantially on that, because I'm just going to throw a guess out that a bridge donation by itself with no labor is going to have a value of around $1 million, and INDOT's telling me it's probably not far off. My initial guesstimate is our grant request is going to be somewhere between 3 and 4 million. 5 million is the maximum that can be received by any one entity. Since Clinton County has not applied in the first or second round, we have that entire amount. I do think we have the potential for a very competitive project based on the projects that I've been involved with and won in the past, and watching their process of analysis. Where it comes down to what I wanted to discuss this morning is, due to all of these characteristics, this is a little bit bigger than some things. I'm still very involved as project lead and general manager over in Colfax. We have a relatively short timeline to try to pull everything together. We do not have to have completed land acquisition, but we do need to know what we need, where we're going, the costs that we're asking for. As I'm sure many in the room are aware of, when applying for other grants, you don't want to underestimate what you request because you need to be sure you can complete the project if it's awarded. This corridor has been requested or planned in our comprehensive plans for decades, so this is not a new idea. Whether or not the grant is awarded, we're still moving towards our overall goals. It would go right past Clinton Prairie, so this would prime this area as there's already a lot of houses on this corridor, but it would definitely make it even more desirable. I do know of one developer currently looking at a large potential development in and around that area, so they may be able to be a partner, as we bring it together. There's only one of me, and because of the land acquisition component and making sure that there's enough right-of-way, I talked to Alan a bit about this, but I think it's wisest to get some outside assistance in terms of making sure that everything comes together, that we have accurate cost estimates. I am not qualified to estimate the costs of dealing with bridges, is just one example, and make sure that that's accurate in a grant. And then we're going to have to do some public meetings as well, just to make sure we kind of have an idea of what's going on. There'll be some more conversation with the commissioners, as part of that process. I have 2 estimates from companies that we've dealt with before. I did ask a third one as well that kind of asked me at the last moment, but they didn't get anything back to me before today's meeting. I got both of these this morning, so I haven't had a whole lot of time to research them in detail. There is a little bit difference in scope, it looks like, which may be part of the difference in cost. But Butler Fairman has submitted a number for between 18 and 22,000. That would include analysis of the corridor, developing the aerial maps for the application, developing the budget estimates. I need to talk to them about this, but contacting local jurisdictions and INDOT, which I've already been taking lead on, so I'm probably going to ask them to modify that a little bit. Figuring out what kind of environmental permitting and utility coordination needs to occur. And then the big one for us is analyzing the ownership and the need for additional right-of-way and figuring out the estimated costs for land acquisition costs and participating in several public meetings, to get an idea of who's willing, who's not, under what terms, what preferences. We do have options for the way that this runs, versus the old rail bed parts versus the road. Being able to allow landowners to bring their voices to the table, I think, will be important in helping the project to be successful. The other estimate is from HWC, which was involved with the sewer and water. They have a little bit more detailed scope than Butler Fairman sent me. Keep in mind, both these companies managed to pull this together for me in about 5 days. So it was kind of a quick thing, and HWC said this is their maximum number. The actual number might be a little bit lower, but they're asking for 43,400. They did add some additional stuff that Butler Fairman did not, and that's where I kind of need to go back to Butler Fairman and make sure we've got similar scopes. But they're adding some evaluations on trail crossings at Colfax Manson and Highway 52, examining not just bringing in a historic bridge, but how the costs change if we did a different type of structure to get over that. And then right now it's looking like, in preliminary look, that the trail in town that NDOT is creating, the glorified sidewalk, for lack of a better word, going out to the 28 project, is going to be on the north side. It was originally supposed to be on the south side. Jason Forsythe does think that there may be a chance NDOT may be willing to look at a last-minute redesign to try to meet up with us. So that's one of the things we're going to discuss. But if not, we've got to have a crossing over 28 too somewhere. 200 West and State Road 28 is one possibility, maybe a little bit further in town. But this estimate includes a study of how we meet those 2 things up, since we can catapult pedestrians over 4-lane roads. As that would make someone's turning. So that's the basic gist. And I think what I'd be looking for today, if possible, is some guidance on council's general feeling, if there's a comfort level, perhaps some understanding of how I might be authorized to move forward, to be able to select a partner and start getting this put together, since we need to be applying by November 1st. October 1st, it'd be great to have everything together by.
My first thought is this is exactly the kind of project that I want to know whether Baker Tilly can find another pot of money that we can, figure out how to dip into. But secondly, I guess the point I want to emphasize that really registered with me is you've got some real time considerations. You've got the deadline for application for the next level trails, which could be that $3 to $4 million grant. Is November, and we'd have to start immediately to get that work done. But two, that State Road 28 project is in process, and eventually those have to meet, and the sooner we can figure out how they would meet while there's still maybe some flexibility on NDOT side, I think is important. The other thing is just, boy, there's just, the stars are aligning and dominoes are falling in our favor in the sense that we've got NDOT willing to work with us on a bridge. So they're taking down these old metal bridges and replacing them with current technology, but they're willing to give us one of those that we can try to go over 52. And we've already going to get some credit for the Manson elevator project that we're doing anyway. So as far as the match, we have this opportunity to put our hand in the pot for $3 to $4 million, and the match is maybe already covered for things that we were already going to do or donations provided by the state. So it seems like a very unique opportunity.
And I would also note that, I think this will be a very competitive grant for Next Level Trails. This isn't our comprehensive plan. If we don't get awarded through Next Level Trails, I'm already looking into alternative funding sources. There are some other 2080 match programs that I've become aware of here recently. So our intent would not be that this would be wasted effort, but if we were not awarded the Next Level Trails grant, then we would start pursuing other alternatives until we find a path and get the project done. So it's not something the intent is just set on the shelf and go, well, that was a nice idea. It's been a goal for 20 plus years, and it's going to continue to be a goal, whether this step gets us to construction or whether this is a step.
And the other thing that I guess I would add that really resonates with me is that we've got, I think it's a real focus of the county and the city right now to add rooftops. One of the things that's really holding us back from getting more development at the interchange is we don't have enough of an employee base or employment base. So we have had developers looking around in that area, and I think if we could sweeten the pot a little bit by saying we've got this trail amenity that their development is going to have direct access to, that'll let them connect Indianapolis and Lafayette. Wow, I just think we could really leverage this into something. This is my gut feeling. So I would be in favor of at least taking the next step of trying to engage outside help. My question to you would be, and I know you said you hadn't had a chance to look at them in very detailed, but do you think there's enough extra value in that HWC proposal that it's worth the extra money, or I guess what's your gut feeling?
I think I want to call and talk to both. Butler Fairman has worked with us over on the project in Colfax. They've been great. Of course, HWC has done a great job as well, with the infrastructure projects. I haven't had long enough to consider that detail. I literally got this a half hour before your meeting. I guess, obviously my goal would be not to spend money that doesn't need to be spent. So I think if it's something you're comfortable with, I'm comfortable making those calls and trying to sort that out. But if you don't feel comfortable, then, I can come back.
How do you guys all feel about this? I mean, this is kind of a fork in the road, so to speak. And
I can certainly run it past like a subset of the council if you want to say, okay, go ahead, but bring it back. And if that subset is uncomfortable, then we bring it back at the next meeting. If they're comfortable, then I go ahead and contract and we get started.
Well, obviously, we're only half the equation. The commissioners will have to weigh in and need to be on board as well. But I'll look both ways. Is anybody uncomfortable with entertaining? Because what my gut feeling is that if we had a consensus to do so, we could say not to exceed 43,000. You make the evaluation as to which way to go, and if you feel like the lower number one is okay, make that recommendation. Off we go.
Yep. And if the funding support is here on this end, then I'll be talking to the commissioners.
I just don't feel like we have a month to wait.
Next meeting or the one after
is what I think.
I'm sorry.
I said I don't feel like we have a month to wait.
No, I'm concerned about that too, especially when you talk about land acquisition. You really don't want to. I mean, just speaking for myself, if the county came to me and said, I need an extra 5 foot of your road right away. Oh, and by the way, I need it 2 weeks from now. Like, your immediate reaction is, you know, wait, where did this come from? So I think the more time we have to put together coordinated and clear communication and give landowners a chance to come to the table and give their input on the project as well, I think that is to our credit to do.
Liz, did you say that NDOT may be part of the 20% match?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep, they're currently still constructing it, but they're through the part underneath. But the work they've done on the bridge over Colfax Manson to allow for the pedestrian walkway can be counted. If they donate the bridge, that can be counted.
Yes.
And then it's possible, I'll have to check with DNR, but if they end up realigning sidewalks and making changes to this project, possible some portion of that, at least whatever it cost them above and beyond their original plan, might be possible to count too. I think we're going to have a very strong match. I'm hoping greater than 20%. If NDOT's able to, I don't want to speak for them because we haven't yet gotten
These are
that
scored on a
committed.
point system, and yeah, so for every percentage above 20%, you get more points. For more cooperative entities, you get more points. So we're really looking strong on. I feel very confident about how
Length
this
of trail
project-
gives you points. Connecting
a
communities
new
that do
community.
not currently have
community.
trail, which Frankfurt is a community of 15,000 with no trail connections to anywhere outside. So that's going to score strongly. I think we're strongly positioned. It's a very competitive grant process, but I'd be optimistic.
I would certainly be for it. I think it's a great need to our community.
Would you like to make a motion to support that not to exceed?
I'll make a motion to support.
The 43 and not to exceed that higher of the two, or?
The 43, where's the 43 coming from? What, because you said 8 and 22 for the Butler.
That was HWC.
18 to 22 for Butler Fairman. The thing that I want to ask Butler Fairman is, Butler Fairman did not specifically mention, some of the additional studies, and they have something else in there I don't need. So I kind of wanted to go back to them and make sure that we had apples to apples before I concluded that, there was actually a substantial difference. I'm comfortable with either of these companies. I think they both have.
I just want you to pick the one that's going to do the right work, and I didn't. If you determine HWCs were the work you need, but we gave you the Butler Fairman money.
Right.
You're handing
And
out.
that's the other question I haven't had a chance to thoroughly consider, but I want to make sure before I state that I actually make sure both companies have fairly brought me the same thing and there's not a difference based on scope.
You're okay with 43, not to exceed 43. So I have that motion by John. Do I have a second? Second by Mike. Any last minute questions for Liz? All right, seeing hearing none, all those in favor, raise your right hand. Motion carries 7-0. So Josh, I'm handing it off to you.
May I perhaps have somebody from council that would be willing to sort of be a communication point so that I can communicate, between meetings?
We've been
and then-
talking about this. I'm happy to continue.
Perfect.
on.
And I'm probably gonna ask the commissioners for the same thing, just because this is it's gonna bring in a lot of funding. It's a large project. I don't want anyone to be surprised.
I just
So-
think it connects with so many other things we've got going on that maybe Josh and I are the natural ones anyway.
I'm good with whoever. That'll work. Thank you.
Okay, Liz, I don't know if do we have anybody else, department head wise? Okay, sorry, that was a needed but a lengthy discussion. Anybody else have any business to come before the council?
Do you want me to save this?
I can't remember what we
Perf.
discussed. Go ahead and bring it up. Let's talk about it real fast. One last item here.
At the end of last year, the commissioners made some changes so that council and commissioner elected officials qualify for perf. And you guys, Jeff, you've been getting information. There's a deposit made every month, and talked to Britt, and she's super busy, and so I don't want to ask her to do anything that's something everybody wants, but I think we need to give her some direction in terms of picking that subject back up, and maybe somehow over the next couple of months giving us some information as to whether we want to go talk to the administrators of PERF and see if we can catch up from previous years, so that ultimately we will get our 8+ years in and qualify.
So where we stood now, so we made ourselves eligible beginning from that start date, and our benefits would accrue from that date. They would allow us to have credit for having to vest after a certain number of years of service, and they would let us have credit for our years of service. The benefit we would be eligible to receive would only start with the beginning of 2021. We have the option with a small amendment to that resolution that would allow us to go back. It would require both the county to make back contributions for our term of service, and also us individually to do our match for back terms of service. But if we did that, then our benefits would be based on, in my case, going back to 2007, in your case, going back to your election, whereas otherwise it would start in 2021. So that's something that we need to, I think we need to investigate it further enough to know what those numbers, I know Britt had put some numbers together before, but that was, I think, before we maybe really knew the scope of what we were looking at. And now I think that we know the eligibility, we know the start date, we do some things. Do you think that we could get that together without totally imposing on your time if we worked with PERF, people at PERF?
I mean, I did the spreadsheets.
Or is it just pulling that back out?
Yeah, and adding this year well, you've already started this year. I really don't know if it'll be that big of a deal.
Does it also include paying things in arrears for officials who are no longer in office?
Yeah, that's a good question.
And that's just how we will amend the agreement.
Okay. So Tom would have a role in this on how he drafts that. But so there'd be two investments. There'd be the public investment that we would have to vote on as a council for making the county contribution, and then it'd be an individual decision that each member would have to make on whether they want to cough up some money on their own to have it. What I'd like to see as a part of that, I don't know if we can get that very easily, is whether a representative of PERF would say, okay, if you do this, this is what your benefit would look like. If you don't do it, this is what your benefit would look like. So I don't know if we could reach out to them and find out whether they'd be willing to discuss with us.
For the, he's talked to them a lot, their legal side, so that may be where we start.
Okay. But Clark's right to bring it up, but we don't want to drop the ball and forget about it and have too much time to get down. I guess, is there a feeling on the council that we want to continue to go down this and at least investigate that, picking up that backdated service?
Yes.
Yes,
I think we
okay.
should.
Okay. So Brett, we probably just need to reach out to Tom, and we'll have that conversation with his counterparts, and then based on the results of that, we can draft an amendment to that resolution. Okay.
Everybody in the county has this.
Yes.
Except for
yes,
the county council and the county commissioners.
And we have it now, so that part's good.
Yeah, I just wanted to just kind of throw that out. So we're not getting anything more than.
But we just started contributing in January.
Right.
Right. Anything else? Seeing and hearing none, call the meeting adjourned.
Well, you
Back.
Yeah.
I forgot about the